So one of the things that came out of the video where I was talking about like colorism and gender war stuff, as I made a comment about the family court system being in practice anti-male. And I received pushback on that, which I think was correct, to kind of point out that when we start talking about family court stuff and we get into MRA territory, it's easy to fall into bad narratives and bad information because it confirms biases and it obfuscates complexity. And I want to just kind of re-engage with that take a little bit. So one of the biggest things, especially in the Black manosphere, but I think it's in all manosphere spaces, especially when you get to like MGTOW type energy, that an example of like red pill ideology hinges partly on the family court system and how the family court system is anti-male or what is the word use? Gynarchal. You know what I'm saying? And this is an area of the manosphere that I empathize but disagree with. I want to first point out that I agree that the family court system in the way it tends to practice is not only anti-male, but this is an important caveat, it's anti-working class and poor male, which also means it's anti-Black male. And the manosphere people will tell you that this is women's fault, that the women have somehow gotten power. The same women that lost their right to abortion also convinced the family court systems to screw men out of fatherhood, right? The same women that can't even get anti-rape laws and anti-sex trafficking laws and all kinds of protections. The same women that can't get like a lot of like reasonable protections under the law for the last 100 years also somehow manipulate the court system to screw men out of their rights as fathers, which is bull. And the thing that they miss is that this is all a part of the same patriarchal system. And these men that get victimized by the family court system just don't got enough patriarchy. In essence, they don't have enough capital. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough resources to take advantage of the situation properly. But I wanted to engage with that because I'm speaking partly from my own, not personal experiences. You know, me and my wife doing good. My kids are good. They all in the house. Everybody good. But I know decent to not so decent men, who have struggled to maintain access to their children. And while it is obvious to me in these circumstances that part of this is because they are dealing with the mothers of their children who are utilizing the court system against them, it's erroneous to blame that on the individual when the system makes it possible and when the system is designed as such. Now, the comments that disagree with me and that take in the video made an important point that I want to start with, which is, for the most part, the vast majority of fathers who are apart from their children, it's because they're not trying, they don't want it. They're not trying that hard. That is the reality of fatherless children. Most children whose fathers are not in their lives is because those fathers are not that interested in being in their lives. I don't think that's untrue. I'm not going to dig into that. So feel free to come and correct me if that's not true on some level. But my experience, my understanding of these systems, the research I've done, that is true. However, when we talk about men that do want to be a part of their children's lives, what we find is a history of essentially laws meant to protect capital, meant to protect money, meant to reinforce gender norms. These laws will definitely stand in the way of men who want to be in their children's lives, and there's a conflict with either their economic situation or the mother of their children that can be used against them to make that much, much, much harder to do. And I think we have to understand that two things to be true at once, because we have this highly highly algorithmically viable image of deadbeat black dads, and that exists. I know some children of some. I know some mothers of children who are trying to co-parent with deadbeat daddies. I know that part. That part's real. We see that all the time. But the problem is we've so normalized that image that people are resistant to understand that there are a lot of black fathers that are fighting tooth and nail to have access to their children. And they're not only fighting their own economic and legal situations, they're also fighting the parents of their children, and they're fighting the court system. And we have to engage with that. And we have to engage with that without blaming women who don't control the system. And it's so funny how when you get into certain spaces within the manosphere, some of these people have system analysis skills, but they refuse to analyze a system where they can blame a woman. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I could analyze this system, but misogyny is life, so I'm gonna blame this woman. And they will bend over backwards to make it make sense. But I want to get into some details. I want to get into some of this, and this is light research. So I'm opening myself up to be critiqued and corrected on all my takes involved in this area, because this is not an area that I tend to speak from places where I feel really, really confident in my expertise. Whereas this was a little research, a little Google Scholar, a little deep dive, a little citation mapping, etc. So people with more expertise, law, whatever, feel free to react and drag me for filth for anything that I missed, and then I'll see where I can fill in the gaps. But I want to get into some of the stuff I found. So it started with a TikTok my wife showed me. Damn, where's that TikTok? That's the one thing I left out. Fucking up. All right, well, I'm gonna just describe it. The laws in Georgia. This is a perfect example of this is such a, oh my God. All right, so the laws in Georgia state that an unmarried man has no legal right to his children. That is a law. I've looked it up. Feel free to look it up. Even if you sign the birth certificate and you are acknowledged as the father by the mother, you have no legal right to that child if you did not marry that mother. Right. What? And this is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to reach for my glasses. I ain't even here. This is what I'm talking about. And so what do you have to do as a father as a father who is unmarried to get legal rights to your child? You have to file what's called a petition to legitimize. This basically legally ties you to that child. And you can still be sued for child support. And this is how I get why niggas get angry. I get it. Oh my God, I get it. That's why I try to hold space. I couldn't imagine. I got homeboys, my own brother, who I don't even talk to right now, but has went through this experience where he had to cross heaven and earth to get the rights to his daughter because the system was set up to exclude him automatically. And that's kind of when I'm speaking about how it's anti-male, and I'm taking a system analysis, and I'm saying, and I'm going to get to more research later. If you set up the laws to explicitly produce a specific outcome, and that outcome tends to always lean towards women having sole control over the fate of the children, then you are being anti-male in that regard. You are being anti-man in that regard. And that's just the simplicity. I'm not saying it's the women that do that on purpose, that control the system. I'm saying the court is set up to make it sure that less men have access to their kids than desired. We're taking all the deadbeat dads out the equation, although I will get to them in a second. And we're just talking about men who want access to their kids and lack the ability to do so because, or are disincentivized, we'll say. Disincentivized to do so. And yes, it is giving forced morality. So let me get to this screenshot. Because when you disincentivize something, you make it less likely to happen. Period. Here is where so this petition to legitimize stuff comes from colonial times. This is law that was pulled from England in the United States. And basically it was a way to protect men, and this is how you know it's patriarchal. Basically, this law comes from the desire to protect men, especially wealthy men, from having to take care of bastard children. That is the core. Let me make sure I say that on screen. Where these laws tend to be born from is from like colonial times, where they pulled laws from England about family law and lineage. And what it was a way for rich and powerful men to protect their estate from their bastard children. Where if you had a child out of wedlock, and so if you weren't married to that mother, and you had not had any intention of passing on your wealth or lineage to that child, then you could basically be like, fuck them kids, and they would get nothing. And you had to do a petition to legitimate, to make it so those kids could be protected and get access to your resources. So he was called the son of the people. He was considered a ward of the village, parish, and neither his parents nor anyone else was required to support him. He could neither inherit from his parents nor be legitimated by them. Christianity, with its emphasis on monogamous marriages, likewise rated him a non-entity. The first statute, according to some status, to illegitimate was the English Poor Law Act of 1576, which imposed on both parents a duty of support. The law, and here's a key word, the law was not drafted out of concern for the children. Whole legal status remained in limbo. Rather, it was an effort to relieve the parents. It was an effort to relieve the parishes of the financial burden of caring for them, as in caring for the children. So what we get from this is that these laws were created to not take care of children, but to protect people with money and to protect the state. And so what happens is, as we build upon these laws, is one of the articles, I can just read the title of it real quick. But it basically kind of goes through like the history of how gender influenced these court decisions, because what these early descriptions of family law were meant to do were protect rich men from having to take care of their children. And because of that, they created laws where that child basically didn't exist, or it definitely wasn't yours unless you decided as such. So let's take it out of that old times and think about how something like that will affect a regular dude. So another article that I found talks about the story of Jonathan Lur, and this was fascinating. A fascinating court case. So Jonathan and Lorraine, and this brings up a lot of important things to consider here. Jonathan and Lorraine are the biological parents of Jessica. And this is a real story, by the way. When Jessica was born, Jonathan visited the two in the hospital every day until they were discharged. Rather than return to the home she had shared for 2 years with Jonathan, however, Lorraine moved elsewhere and did not tell Jonathan where she and Jessica had gone. For about 1 year, Jonathan was occasionally able to find Lorraine, and when she allowed him to do so, he visited Jessica. Eventually, Jonathan hired a private detective to find Lorraine, who at that time had married another man and had legally adopted Jessica, meaning that Jonathan was now a legal stranger to his biological daughter. Lorraine said he could not visit Jessica, and if he tried to do so, she would have him arrested. This court case ended up going to the Supreme Court, or I think the New York Supreme Court, but this is like a landmark court case. And Jonathan lost. He lost. So to kind of break that down, because this brings up a lot of important things. So this guy and this woman were together. They lived together, but he was unmarried, right? Thank you. We're gonna come back to this. Forced morality. Oh man, we'll come back to that. So he lived with this woman. He was unmarried, and for 2 years they lived together while she was pregnant. After the baby was born, she left. And it's important that we don't know why she left and why it was so important to her to not give him access to her and his child. And I want to come back to that. We don't know this. I want to be clear. We don't know this. And I think some of us probably are going to assume the worst, because in general, we can't think of any other reason as to why a mother would do that. But I know for a fact that that reason we're thinking about isn't always the reason. But anyway, so she left and made it very difficult for him to access the baby. After some time, she remarried and had her new husband adopt their child, which legally severed his relationship to the child. So he is a legal stranger to the child and has no rights to her at all. He took it to court. And basically, and here's where this comment comes into effect. He took it to court and basically said, nobody even told me this was happening. I should have had a legal right to be there to plead my case before I was legally severed from this child. And the court basically said, did you fill out paperwork A? Did you fill out paperwork B? Did you take care of the child after the child was born? No. Nigga, you out of luck. You know what I'm saying? And so the first thing I want to engage with, because I could not find this in the research I did, and anybody that wants to fact check me and follow up on this, is I want to understand what was it between them that made this woman not want to give him access to his child. There are a lot of laws that are built around protecting a woman from an abusive man that happens to be the father of their children, right? There's a lot of laws there and there's nuance there, and that's like a complicated thing I don't know enough about and didn't research, so I don't want to get into. But if this man was not like a threat to the child and the mother, it is amazing to me, and we don't know. But if this is not the case, I don't know how else to explain that away other than being anti-male at its core, in that it's the belief that a man's contribution to a child is not important, and that his rights and experience as a father is not important to protect under the law. And that is something that is proven through the history of these laws. And I want to be clear, the reason for that is patriarchy. It is not hatred of men in practice. It is not the desire to limit the rights of men in practice. It is the desire to uphold a patriarchal system of gender norms where a man is a protector or provider who is not supposed to even be involved in child rearing. And a woman's natural role is to nurture and raise children. Bring up another quote that kind of supports and illustrates that. So this is another quote from a paper I got. Again, these will all be in the description. These societally imposed roles ensure the continued economic subjugation of women by requiring their dependence on men for economic survival. Following divorce in the forms of alimony and child support, as social etiquette demanded that mothers not work. Courts promoted society's prescribed stereotype of the women who did not work as weak and in need of state-instituted protection by upholding workplace legislation designed to restrict women from working beyond a certain amount of hours, frequently in industries deemed unhealthy to their alleged gentler constitutions, or from working particular jobs. So, and this is really the smoking gun. When we talk about why child courts tend to favor women for having primary custody of children, is because tacitly they are endorsing the idea that a man is meant to be a protector and provider, and at the same time incentivizing women not entering the workforce and not requiring that men and women compete in the workforce on equal terms. They are reifying the patriarchal norms of men and women, two kids, a house and a dog, women be a housewife, men be a provider and a working man, the whole capitalist patriarchal project. That is what this is all about. It is not the hatred of men. It is not women seeking to control men through the courts, although that does happen. It is the courts aligning themselves with a system whose main purpose is upholding the hegemony and the status quo of patriarchy. So when I hear dudes talk about the family court system and complain about women, I get so frustrated because as usual, y'all niggas are arguing and fighting the wrong people. And folks don't realize how easy it is to get sucked into misogyny and patriarchal thinking, and why that is the thing that happens, because it protects the system. Because if I'm yelling and fighting black women on the internet, I'm never gonna fight the white people. I'm never gonna fight white supremacy. That's what it comes down to. So to further illustrate how this ties to capitalism, the people most, and this is why you see black men rallying about this the most, and why it's hard to sometimes discern like black men trying to fight the system versus misogyny and misogynoir. Because when you hear me talk about these systems and how they're meant to protect capital and the status quo, and in essence, rich men, what you see then is that the men most abused by this system are going to be men with less means. Like going back to the Jonathan Lear case, he was supposed to fill out like 2 different court things to keep his name on this child's, record and require him to be notified if this child was going to be adopted. So think about the type of man who is going to struggle who wants to be a father, but is going to struggle, right? Not like your image with the deadbeat, not the nigga with 8 kids. I'm talking about brothers who are trying to work it out, around the way dudes, want to be there for their kids, want to be a father for their kids, but a variety of systemic barriers are not going to make that easy. They're working class jobs, blue collar jobs, no collar jobs. You know what I'm saying? They maybe been systematized before. So first, they have to be willing and ready to engage with the legal system. So you're gonna tell these black men, if you want to have access to your children, bring your ass to court. That's not easy. That costs money. Oh shit! In Georgia, going back to that petition to legitimate, that shit costs $80. Which to me, that's nothing. To a lot of people, that's nothing. But to a dude that works at Target, that's having a kid and not getting along with his baby mama, $80 is a lot. That's a lot of money, right? So $80. And then the craziest thing, a woman can deny the petition. And if she denies the petition, she has to be served by a sheriff, and that costs another $25. And if you don't know her address and the sheriff can't serve her appropriately, like if she's just out, it costs $25 every time the sheriff goes to serve. So we're talking about, it might be like, to get your name on this record to be a real father under the law in the state of Georgia, you might have to come out $150, $200, which if you're broke, you see what I'm saying? And then we're gonna call the nigga a deadbeat. And I'll come back to that. So that's the first thing. These systems are not easily engaged with by the men who suffer from them the most. Because you have to be able to pay for lawyers, pay for legal fees, have time to come up to a court system, be in a mental, emotional, and physical state to be present effectively. And then you have to essentially prove your humanity to a court system that says you should just be protected and providing. What you want to raise this kid for? You see what I'm saying? I'm passionate because, like, I know multiple men who have went through this, and it frustrates me because when I tell these men stories, people's natural response is to reduce it to the deadbeat daddy discourse. And I'm like, these niggas not deadbeats. They just don't get along with their baby mama, and they gotta fight the court and pay thousands of dollars to prove they're not deadbeats. Think about how backwards that is. Think about how backwards that is. And then I get more frustrated because it's goofy in the background saying gynarchy, you dumb motherfuckers. Oh, because it's not gynarchy, it's patriarchy and capitalism and racism. Yeah. Pieces. Yes. A lot of motherfuckers can't. If You find two teen parents right now, that 16-year-old boy can't afford $80. He got to get it from his parents. Yes, a lot of motherfuckers, fucking is free. Making babies is free. Being a father is expensive. That's the reality. Being a father and having the right to do that is expensive. I get so frustrated by the dudes in the background talking about gynarchy and matriarchy and misandry, etc., and pointing at women when it don't take much to notice that's just a system. It don't take much, but motherfuckers don't have the balls to do that. They don't want that. Like, fuck you mean $80? Like $80 is a lot of money to a lot of people. Being poor should not disqualify you from being a father. It may be a joke. It may be a joke. I'm sorry. I don't want to get at people. So, and then the other thing that bothers me is it all then connects to it all connects back to racism. That was what I was about to talk about. So first and foremost is the fact that I guarantee you these petition to legitimate rules are more prominent. I haven't looked this up, so feel free to correct me, but I know it exists in Georgia, and I know for a fact that Georgia's law is intensely affected by slave laws, intensely affected by white supremacy. Like Georgia, y'all, people don't know, Georgia has the second most amount of counties in the entire country, little ass Georgia, has more counties than California and Texas and a whole bunch of other states. That's way bigger. And the reason why is because that gave more power to plantation owners in politics. The reason why Georgia has runoffs is because as black voters and black politicians began to get power, they wanted to make it possible if you had like 4 politicians running and one of them was black, you might split the whole white vote between 3 politicians, but that black politician was probably going to get 100% of the black vote. And if he got like 40% and the run-up got 30%, they was like, fuck. Be right back. Somebody tell me what I was just saying a second ago. Is this what they call the stun lock? Because I have no idea Georgia runoffs, thank you. The point I'm trying to get to is Georgia's laws are entrenched in white supremacy. Like the laws that we have right now, their origins often tie back to trying to be racist legally. So I guarantee you this petition to legitimate shit comes from white slave owners or just white men in general having half black bastard children. And it's like, if you are a plantation owner and you don't want your black child to own parts of your land or have rights to your land, and you don't have to deal with that shit because you haven't legitimated that kid. So that rule is here today, probably because it's an old rule based on the desire to allow rich and powerful men to decide when they want to be fathers, decide how they want to participate in fatherhood, and hold on to patriotic frameworks. And that's the thing. You seldom hear regular dudes be real deep into this anti-woman shit, because regular dudes, often dudes with access to capital and resources, it's still a struggle, it's still painful, and they'll complain about it, but they can do it because $80 is. But for poor men, for men with less resources, they are basically shit out of luck. And then the flip side to that is how we then want to depict these men. So here's another piece of information from something I found. Currently, there's a strong norm of financial responsibility for non-residential fathers. Fathers who do not pay child support are now portrayed as criminals who are clearly ostracized in many communities. For example, major newspapers post photographs of deadbeat fathers, those who are delinquent in their child support payments, on their front pages. And state agencies' websites features wanted ads of deadbeat parents. So like, the ramifications of that are very deep. What we're basically getting at is that deadbeat parents, which again, I hope this is caught up in how I edit this, or people that came in late. This is not a matter of saying that deadbeat fatherhood does not exist and is not a major issue. It's a matter of expanding the nuance and complexity of that conversation. and how that manifests. And so one thing that's been happening is we have created, almost like in the same vein of the welfare queen, we now have the deadbeat daddy narrative, which is incredibly harmful to Black men. And we have all this information and resource about what Black fatherhood looks like, but we have an oversaturation on the images of Black absentee fathers and deadbeat daddies and, etc. There's a real website. This is a real website in Arizona. Make sure I can see how this is looking. Okay. That puts up mugshots of deadbeat parents. And I want you to notice, even if you don't notice how often these are Black and brown people, right? Also notice that these also present like, this is like a whole ass mugshot of this man. How many of these people, I'm just gonna say, don't present as folks with a ton of means to capital. These are working class people, right? Whole ass mugshots. Like, this dude is clear. This is clearly a mugshot. Can y'all see this? What? And so first off, we got to get into like the politics of social shaming and the carceral mentality. And this is something I'm gonna talk about in this video coming up, about how we weaponize social shaming as if that helps, right? Oh yeah, a lot of white men, but also a lot of Latino and Black men. And please believe that the Black men are going to be the faces that people remember. The Latino men will be the faces that people remember. And I'm not absolving any of those people from, their shirking responsibilities for whatever reason in their situation for being parents. But what happens is we build this narrative and it becomes this image of Black men not wanting to be around their children, which becomes yet another barrier for a brother that has to go through all those things to get to court to ask for access to the children. So I say this to say the other thing that this whole narrative around absentee fathers does is it helps reinforce anti-Black male images. And it renders invisible Black. That's why like Black fatherhood is such a fucking fetishized commodity. Like, I can't go outside with my kids and not like get like the biggest, widest smiles. Look at this nigga doing his job. Look at this nigga doing exactly what most Black men are doing with their kids. Good job, you so special. And then the flip side, I don't let my wife, I think I've talked about this. I don't like when my wife goes out without me with our children, because I recognize how society views Black women in public without a man around. It's a really ugly, stereotypical image. But the flip side is, if I'm out with my kids, I might as well be fucking Barack Obama, The Rock, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And like, don't get me wrong, it feels good for people to say good job, but like me, the way I'm wired, I can't help but recognize that I'm being thanked for doing a very normal thing. But people, right. I'm being thanked for doing a very normal thing, and people are responding like that because they have it in their head that Black fathers taking care of their kids is abnormal, when it's not. And they dissing me when I'm not there. So if my wife is out there without my kids, they shitting on her and me. And she just wanted to run to Target after school. You know what I'm saying? Me and my wife pick up and drop off our kids together when almost every time. You speak so well, parenting edition. Yes. So yeah, so this whole system is fucked up. And this is, again, not to take away from the fact that the majority of children who are growing up without their fathers, it is because, absence that is not legally based. It's because usually often the lack of will or death or jail is why a lot of men do not have access to their children. But for men who are able and have the desire to have access to their kids, the biggest reason, from what I can surmise, is that the court systems disincentivize easy access by defaulting things around gender norms and gender expectations that are built out of a patriarchal capitalist system meant to protect people with money, meant to protect the state, and not really invested in what's best for the children. This is not to take away from, again, deadbeat daddies. This is also not to obfuscate the complexity of abuse and toxic relationships and how that complicates everything. This is just about recognizing for everybody involved in this conversation, for you manosphere motherfuckers, for you MRAs, for you meninists or whatever, stop giving the women all the smoke. The women do not control the system. You're copping out on the real challenge you need to make. It's not challenging women. The women do not control the system. It's the court system, which is a byproduct of the state, that is erring on the side of upholding patriarchy. And upholding patriarchy means you don't need that much access to your children. So that is how we're going to set things up. And on the flip side, for those of you on the opposite end of the spectrum, I need you to be critical of how easily you buy into narratives around deadbeat dads who don't have access to their children. Because although I couldn't imagine a world where I don't have access to my kids, I recognize through the experiences I've had vicariously, knock on wood, that there are a lot of men who, if not for a GoFundMe, if not for getting a loan, would not have access to their kids. And their stories don't exist in the grand narrative of this issue. And so when you promote that narrative, you marginalize those voices, you marginalize those children, and you absolve patriarchy. You feel me? So that's it. I want to go back to, I blocked them, but I want to put it up here because this is what I'm talking about. I guarantee you this is some divester shit. I don't know who it is, but this is divester shit. And this is what I'm talking about. And this is how you know this stops on both sides. It stops being about actual facts, actual research, etc., and it starts being about personal biases and agenda. This motherfucker brought up Akon, who literally is the exact type of person I'm talking about. A man who is rich and is buying into patriarchy and using it to have fatherhood on his terms. When literally the data on Black men and their children completely negates this. But when that Akon story came out, these Nick Cannon stories that come out, way more popular. Everybody knows who Nick Cannon is. Everybody saw that Akon story. Nobody knows who Jason Wilson is. Nobody. Nobody knows that shit. And it's because those narratives don't serve the status quo. So you can have a person like literally bring up 4 celebrities and say Black men don't care about their kids based off these 4 celebrities. And I'm gonna just resist digging deeper into like the problems there. Like, do y'all know how much money, and I'm saying this also because I might do this. Y'all know how much money I could get if I put more pictures of me and my kids on Instagram? Like, y'all wouldn't get no more videos. Like, let me get a better camera and put effort into being a Black fatherhood Instagram content creator. I've talked to them. I know the game. Don't please believe it's something that I may dabble in the near future. But like literally, there's a whole market for that because people want to commodify that image because they think it's rare. So yeah, that's that. Appreciate y'all chilling. Last thing is, please, everybody that's still watching, I need you all to share the video from Monday. And if you have the resources to donate to the legal cause for the Atlanta Forest Defenders. Just please, if you can, get on that. That video is not doing as bad as I thought. That was a glitch in YouTube system, but I still want to get it out there So I turned off mid-roll ads. This is not a plea for my financial benefit. This is more just I want to make sure that there's some benefit from my platform to actual direct action causes. So get into that if you can. That's all I got for y'all. Peace and blessings.